Number 103 in HMV's premium collection is the wonderful Judgment Night, released in 1993, directed by Stephen Hopkins, the man that did some fantastic genre fare like Predator 2, A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, and the absolutely tremendous The Ghost in the Darkness. Now, this one stars Emilio Estevez, Cuba Gooding Jr., Stephen Dorff, Jeremy Piven, and Dennis Leary, and a little side character of Peter Green as well, better known as Zed from Pulp Fiction. And this movie's all about a group of kind of 4 middle class guys who have a strong relationship one way or another, who are travelling to a boxing match when they decide to make a wrong turn and go through an inner city of, well, it leads down a path of destruction for them as they see a gangland murder, and as their witnesses, the gang leader, played by Leary, decides to chase after them and try and kill them, and therefore the rest of the movie is just a chase through a landscape that they are unfamiliar with, dealing with people who they don't know how to relate to, and it kind of brings into that fear of the middle class, you know, terrified of people who they deem to be below them, who deem to live in poverty, who they are genuinely afraid of, and it's just so pulpy. It's a movie that came out in 93, but it feels very 80s in its aesthetic and the way it delivers its over the handed themes that it has, but it's incredibly fun. You get these guys who are, for the most part, just archetypes. They are just typical characters who don't really break out of those 2 dimensions that they have. You know, you get the kind of loudmouth, smart talking, thinks that they can get away with everything by just talking fast. You get the kind of stoic leader type who has a family, has had a checkered past but is willing to settle down. We get his best friend who just wants to be kind of part of the group, wants to relive old times, and the kind of sullen, wayward brother who is kind of following in what his footsteps were when he was that age as well, the leader's character anyway. And they just end up on a chase. This is primarily a chase thriller as they run through sewers, run through tenement buildings, have to climb over dangerous things to get away from these people who are going to brutally murder them. But it is, at the heart of it, very typical of these kind of movies. And what I like most about these is, even though it has these typical tropes, even though it follows familiar beats that we've seen before, it doesn't take away any of the enjoyment. The silliness that creeps into the movie later on doesn't really take anything away from this just being an entertaining popcorn flick. The kind of thing I could really get my teeth into. I'd say the weakest of the cast in my eyes is probably Emilio Estevez, the main player in here. Almost everyone else around him does particularly well in what they have to do. There is some interesting photography throughout the movie as well, some of it rather interesting, showing the sort of stark and sullen landscapes that they are in, showing exciting set pieces, particularly when they're crossing the ladder. Some oddball set pieces where it has a close-up of Leary's mouth with a split diopter of someone in the background that just seems to linger on that shot way too longer than it should do, as if it's almost pleased with the composition, which just is a little bit odd. But again, all these quirks add to the aesthetic of the movie, and it ends up becoming a rather engrossing, fun, if not ludicrous, film. There are moments where you just have to suspend disbelief in this one, where police should be responding to situations, but they don't, because they're trying to highlight that police don't go and help these type of people because that's just a bad thing that happens. And it was all kind of pertinent in this timescale when this movie came out, that the police just were more against the poverty stricken rather than for them or aiding them as they should have been. I think Dennis Leary is really terrific as the main leader here. I think he has a real menace about him. He has this loquacious manner of being able to articulate himself, of proving that he's extremely smart, and just being able to see most of the situations and the angles that people are up against, while being extremely vicious and forgiving as well. And I think that's key to these things, to have a bad guy that's so maniacal and menacing that you really want the people to get away because they are so troublesome. And it's a nice duality to have in a good bad guy, where you can see the charm in them. You can see that kind of personality where you want to be attracted to it. You want to be around that person because they are so smart, they are so charming, they say all the right things. But there is that tinge of just evil throughout that character that you'd be constantly wary of being within his company. There's a moment later on where he kills one of his guys just out of a fit of rage, just building upon this nature of this character, which is great. There are some moments that I don't particularly like the character of Ray, who's played by Jeremy Piven, who in almost typecasting plays that fast talking, I can get myself out of any situation kind of character. It ultimately meets an end early on in the movie, and nobody mentions him again. He's just gone, forgotten. Even at the end of the movie, as they kind of deal with the trauma they've been put through, nobody mentions this character. It was almost superfluous to the entire story, and we just don't care about him at all. I think the bad guys are great. I think majority of the good guys are interesting enough. I think the set pieces are varied and fun and always add this sense of urgency and tension to them, which make them incredibly fun to watch. And Judgment Night for me was a great return to checking out. It's one that I hadn't seen in a decade or two, and I just fell in love with it again. Incredibly 90s aesthetic, incredibly set of that time period, focusing on thematics that were prevalent at that time period, but still having that pulpy genre excitement that I just really do love. I'd love to know your thoughts on Judgment Night, what you thought of it, what you liked or didn't like about it. Are you going to check it out? Let me know in the comment box below, and I'll see you next time on Man v Film.